Hey everybody, it's Corbett Barr from Think Traffic, and I am super stoked, if I might use a surfing term, to be talking today with Derek Halpern from Social Triggers. Derek has just absolutely exploded on the blogging scene over the past 11 months or so, and dare I say it, he is an A-lister among A-listers. So Derek, hey, how's it going today?
Dude, what's up, man? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I always love chatting with you, and I feel like we should chat more often because I learn something every time we talk. So I wanted to get you on today basically just to talk about what's gone on at Social Triggers over the past 11 months. I think everybody who watches this, who's familiar with Think Traffic, probably has seen you around already. It seems like your name has been absolutely everywhere, not just in blogging circles, but also with your podcast. You've been involving a lot of cool people from other fields. And I suspect that something that has led to your success over the past 11 months has had to do with doing things a little bit differently from everyone else. So I really wanted to dig into that. To start with, is there anything that you can share with us in terms of sort of success metrics? I can tell people how phenomenal you are, but is there anything you can share with us that sort of quantifies exactly what's gone on for you?
Yeah, so to really just break this down, a lot of people say the size of your audience doesn't matter. It's how loyal your audience is, right? Well, I'm of the mind that I want a huge audience that's loyal. I'm not trying to cater to my 1,000 true fans. I want 100,000 true fans. So keeping that in mind, the main success metrics I want to share is really just how large Social Triggers has grown in about 11 months. In January, I broke 100,000 hits in January. So that was about 10 months, maybe about about 10 months later, over 100,000 hits. Actually, it was closer to 150,000 hits. From an RSS standpoint, I don't promote my RSS feed because I think RSS is useless. It's only an industry insider thing. Most of the mainstream world doesn't know it. But you use RSS for just a nice gauge of readership. And my RSS list is actually right around 17,300 people or so. And I did that in about 11 months also. And then it comes down to the email list, which is the most important metric. And the email list is well over 10,000 emails. I don't publicly disclose my email list mainly because just I'm not ready to disclose it yet. But that's well over 10,000 emails also, probably closer to 20,000.
Dude, you're absolutely crushing it. I don't know, I can't think of anyone who's grown as quickly as you have. And we could talk about the whole overnight success idea. I mean, obviously, you've been working in this industry for a long time. You have a lot of connections, I think, and you've sort of sat back, I think, smartly and kind of watched what everyone else has done for a while before coming up with your own plan, which is brilliant. But I want to ask you, looking back on that success, what do you think when you first started, what decisions did you make specifically to try to be different from what everybody else is doing out there that have contributed to your success now?
All right, so this is the first step that everyone just seemingly skips. I mean, they write about it in marketing books. It started with the book, positioning or unique selling proposition. People skip over finding their unique selling proposition for some reason. I don't know why. This is the most important thing that you can do before launching a blog. It doesn't matter how often you update. It doesn't matter how much content you create. It doesn't matter how many connections you have. What matters is where does your blog fit in the current marketplace, right? And a book that really talks about that is The Blue Ocean Strategy. Have you read that book?
No, but you've recommended it before.
So the Blue Ocean Strategy is really just about finding a blue ocean where there's no competition, because when there's no competition, it's easier to win. So I kept this in mind. I took that straight to heart, and I was like, look, who are the top blogs in the marketing space right now? Well, there's people who focus on copywriting. There's people who focus on blogging. There's people like you who focus on specifically traffic and other marketing principles. There's people like Pat Flynn who kind of wraps his brand around passive income. And that's great. But what I had noticed was there was no one talking about the psychology of online marketing. No one was talking about really Robert Cialdini's book, Influence, which was really geared towards the real world and business transactions. No one was talking about influence-related principles in the online space. And I knew it was a hot topic because there was hundreds of books about it in the real world, which means it would only make sense that people online would like it too. And no one was talking about it. So I decided to hit that topic of online, psychology meets online marketing. And since I was really one of the first people to drive that home as my main core brand, it became something that people could talk about and reference in a unique way. So not only was I building readers, let's say, you know, a new reader would come to my site, they would remember me because I had something unique to offer them. I wasn't just another Me Too blog. And that's really the first step, is finding that unique selling proposition and making sure it's unique from other blogs. You don't need to be unique from every blog. You just need to be unique from the top blogs.
And so then your job basically becomes finding the really interesting studies and the really interesting psychological principles that happen, and then translating those things into something that your audience can use, and experimenting on them yourself as well, right?
Yeah, so you got to find the research studies. I got to find those research studies. Then I got to figure out how that works online. Then I'll often test it myself. If it works, I write about it. If it doesn't work, I don't tell anyone I tested it. And it really just comes down to just a lot of reading, a lot of academic research, a lot of book reading, and just a lot of trying to sit here in my little man cave trying to figure out how everything works from the real world and the online world.
So something else that I noticed that you work on, and this obviously must be from the psychological research that you do, something that you do that other people don't do. Let's say a lot of people who enter the online marketing space, who run a blog about online marketing in any shape or form, a lot of them focus on creating surface level shareable content. So 21 ways to do such and such, 5 things that you need to know, whatever. You do a little bit of that. I mean, I think you understand headlines and the importance of them, but I notice a lot of times it seems like you're trying to gain mind share in a different way, in a more influential way. So for example, you've come up with concepts like the drafting technique. You could have easily called that like how to get more press in 5 days or something, right?
Yeah.
And if you called it how to get more press in 5 days, maybe it gets shared, but then it gets forgotten about. You don't even remember who wrote it. It doesn't become a thing that people talk about. How do you come up with ideas like the drafting technique? And am I reading into it, or is this what you're trying to do to sort of gain the mind share in that way?
So that's actually really interesting. If I come up with an idea and I figure something out that's interesting to people, I try to name it something. And the reason why you want to name it is because if people start using the name that you told them to use, one, it's easy to track. It's easy to track who's using your content. But two, every time they use that name, it's your content. People then Google that particular technique, and then you're associated with every technique that you created. The one, I made a huge mistake last year in 2011. I told everyone to start using the feature box. And I really popularized the use of the feature box on blog design. I messed up because I could have called it something like Halpern headers. And everyone wouldn't be talking about the feature box right now. They would be talking about Halpern headers. So That was one example of where I didn't name something that I should have named. And now everyone in the world is using a feature box. And it's well known that I'm one of the first people to kind of coin that use in blog design.
Right.
So now I make sure I name everything. If I tell you how to reach out to press, I call it the drafting technique. If I tell you that you should make your font size a size 14 or size 16, which is another thing that I was one of the few people to start really promoting back in the day, I said that size 14 is the new 12 or size 16 is the new 12. And that's actually a very catchy phrase. And I see people Googling that all the time. I see people Googling the drafting technique. I see people Googling what I called the header removal test.
Yep.
And naming that stuff is good for branding because then, one, you created the idea, but two, it gives people something to reference. Like now, if someone writes a blog post about how to get press, if they mention the drafting technique, they'll likely throw me a link because I created the drafting technique.
Yeah. Yeah, it almost creates like a mnemonic device as well, or some hook in people's brain so that they don't think, oh, what was that article I read somewhere? I don't remember where. They just, boom, they remember it. When when people think about write epic shit, like I get links from that all the time. It's interesting how one concept can really almost build someone's career.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let me ask you, and I should congratulate you on the spread of some of those ideas, like the feature box that you mentioned, your about page techniques. I noticed that's everywhere. I've been experimenting with some of those myself. A lot of that stuff is really spreading. But I know that there are a lot of things out there that you can talk about until you're blue in the face, and people just won't do for some reason. Even though it's easy, it seems easy to you, people just won't do it. Like you mentioned, the unique selling proposition earlier. And some of these things, I think when you and I are talking, for example, this whole idea of branding concepts, it's almost like, oh shit, Derek's giving away his secret sauce and now he's going to have to move on to something else. Well, the fact is, like, you can talk about this for years and years, and a few people will use it, but it's not necessarily going to catch on. What are some of those things that that maybe you've been talking about that just aren't catching on yet that you think should, and why don't those take hold?
So let me just start from the beginning. Before we talk about some concepts that people aren't embracing just yet, let's talk about human behavior for a minute.
All right.
When you give people too many decisions to make or too many options to take, they often choose none of those options. This was proven with Sheena Iyengar's jam study, where, just to quickly rehash, she had on one Saturday, she had a jam display with 6 jams, like jam, peanut butter, and jam. 6 jams. On another Saturday, they had 24 jams. The 24 jam display attracted more people. Actually stopped by to look at the 24 jam display because it was like awe-inspiring. It was like, wow, 24 jams, this is cool. But the 6 jam display, while it attracted less people, sold like something like 600% more jam than the larger jam display. When you give people too many options, they take no option. You want to minimize those options. Let's take this back to why I don't write those types of 21 tips to getting more blog traffic. I don't do that because if you give people 21 tips, chances are they're going to read that and not use any of them. I tend to focus on giving people one action. I want every blog post, they read it, they get one thing they should do, and then they go do it. This is just typical human behavior. If you give people too many actions to take, they'll take none. I give them one action, they'll take one action. That's why a lot of my ideas have been able to spread, because I make my content about the one action. And then I reinforce that one action all of the time. When I first talked about the feature box, I told people, hey, I added a feature box to my blog. Look how well it did for me. Then I did it to another blog. I was like, look, they added a feature box to their blog. Look how well it did for them. I'll pick one technique and I'll continuously sell that technique until I believe everyone is using it. And then I'll move on to another technique that I believe people should use. So it's all about finding the one thing people should do, then you reiterate why they should do it. Now, what are some things that haven't caught on right now? The one thing that actually, much to my dismay, is the importance of building an email list. I got a lot of people to start building email lists, but they're not focusing on that as their main goal. And they're really doing themselves a disservice. They're promoting their social media profiles, and they're talking about things like Pinterest. They're talking about things like Twitter. And yeah, these things are great. They send traffic, but you don't need to build your following on these particular outposts, I think as Chris Brogan calls them, to get traffic from them. If your audience is on that particular network, they'll share it for you. Yes, having a network of your own helps, but if you got an email list, you could build a Facebook page overnight. I've got like 2,700 likes on my Facebook page. There's not one link to it on my blog anywhere. The reason why I got 2,700 links is I focused building on an email list. And then one day I said, hey guys, by the way, I have a Facebook page and I got 1,000 likes in 5 minutes. Focus on the email list. Now, why don't people focus on building that email list? Well, this comes down to psychology. When people start a blog and you start writing posts, it's very disheartening in the beginning. You're not getting very much traffic. You're not getting any blog comments. You're not really getting much of anything. And that feels horrible. It feels horrible. It makes it feel like no one is reading your hard work. You're not getting any positive reinforcement for all of your hard work. People promote social media, on the other hand, because they do get that reinforcement. They send out a tweet, they'll get one reply. They'll see someone else's tweet, they'll reply. That conversation feels great. It lets people know. It lets the person who's running their social media account know that they actually exist in the universe. Now, I do a lot of research. A lot of people email me what they're struggling with. That's another thing that I really focus on. And a lot of people have actually said this exact word. They said, I'm running a blog and I feel like I'm invisible. So no one wants to feel like they're invisible. They want to have recognition. They want people to acknowledge the fact that they're putting hard work into their blog. So I believe people aren't building the email list because they're getting that positive reinforcement of conversation on social media. And they're not ready to focus on the email list because email is more of a long-term play. It's kind of like, why do people eat sweets today but want to lose weight in 3 months?
Right.
You know, people can't look at the long term. So I believe that's why email list building hasn't really taken off as a main focus right now. And it also helps that there's a lot of people who are saying build social media followings, and these people have never built social media followings. So that's another issue.
Right. And just to break down your strategy, in case people haven't heard this before, I think what you recommend is basically on your blog, when you work hard to get people on your blog, you want to keep them there. And you want to have the strongest mechanism possible for getting them back to your blog, which is email. Email is the channel through which you can actually reach people. Twitter is a bunch of noise. You can tweet something and you may have 10,000 followers, but like 100 people are going to see that tweet or something, right? Email, you send out an email. If you have good content, you can get 80% of the people on your email list to open it. So for a list of 10,000 people, you could have 8,000 people literally open your email. So it's just a far more powerful channel. But I think people have just been sold the idea that, Twitter, Facebook, that's the key to building success online. And what you're saying is, forget about that stuff on your blog. Stop sending people elsewhere. Keep them on your blog. And if you want to build the Facebook profile, do that in Facebook. Don't worry about doing it from your own blog, right?
You're on social media to get people back to your real business.
Right.
Right? Now, I personally don't know anyone who got famous on social media. I mean, there's a few people, I can count them on my hands, of people who got famous because of Twitter or got famous because of Facebook. Very few. I know a significantly more amount of people who built audiences and websites and businesses from building blogs than from building Twitter accounts.
Absolutely.
And they did it before Twitter existed. They did it before social media was a big deal. Blogs are the answer.
Right. And you know, the interesting thing about blogs is if you look at Twitter and Google Plus and whatever, the people who became really huge on those networks, a lot of times were in the very beginning of those services or in there within the first year or so. Blogging has been around now since, modern blogging since 2003 or 2004 when all those services like Blogger came out. And you still see people, we're talking to you today. You just started 11 months ago, and here you are, at the top of the blogging heap. So anything is possible with blogging. I don't see the same thing happening on Twitter or Facebook so much because there's just so much noise out there.
You could count it on one hand. I mean, there's a few standouts. Like there's people, what's that guy? Shit My Dad Says. He got famous on Twitter, or that new Twitter account, the GS Elevator. It's all this funny quotes from people who work at Goldman Sachs or something like that. They got famous on Twitter. But there isn't anyone else. Like, there's 5 people maybe. Maybe there's a little bit more, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. And it depends on what you're trying to do as well. Obviously, I think Twitter and Facebook, things spread there that are like this meme. It wasn't just shit my dad says, but it was like shit so-and-so says, whatever, like white girls say or whatever. Yeah. Memes like that catch on, that are like funny. But if you're trying to build a business, it's really hard to rise above the noise. People are sort of numb to your messages on Twitter, I think.
Exactly.
So let's talk about your content strategy, getting back to your blog. What are you trying to accomplish with each time you post? Because it seems like you're very careful about posting on your blog. A lot of people, I think, just feel like, I got to get 3 posts out every week or whatever. You seem to be a lot more calculating about what you're doing. So what is it that you're trying to accomplish each time you post on your blog?
Well, every time I post an article on my blog, it's to get people to take action on what it is I'm talking about. I'm not writing something if I don't want people to take action on it. So my goal is to write a blog post that convinces people to take action on what I'm telling them to do so they can get those results. The more results I get people, the more likely they're to become loyal readers for life, right? So let's take this back to an example. I promoted the use of the feature box because I knew the feature box worked, right? Now, everyone who adds a feature box to their blog and gets insane results, what do you think happens? They think, Derek told me to add this feature box. I got great results. I can see the results I got because I could see the people entering their email into my feature box. Now what happens? Every time they load up their own website, they see that feature box, they subconsciously think of me because I got them those results. So my goal, every blog post, is to give people a result, to teach them something, give them a result. And if I can do that continuously, that's how I'm going to build a rabidly loyal following. And that's how I'm going to be able to sell people other products because they know I'm about giving people results.
That's brilliant. Actually, people are always looking for the secret. What's the secret? And so many people focus on creating shareable content. How do I go viral? How do I go viral? Well, going viral doesn't get you shit usually. I mean, honestly, like you'll get 100,000 people to your website. Maybe 100 of them will stick around, and they don't even know why they stuck around because it's not as if you changed their life in some meaningful way. Getting people to take action is tough, but if you do it, you have a fan for life, right?
Yeah, essentially, you give them a result, any kind of result, and it's a positive result, that person will keep coming back for more results. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. So your posting schedule is sometimes sporadic, I think. What are you doing right now, and what's the thinking behind that?
It really comes down to, one of the big questions people ask me is, how do you find the research? How do you know what to write about? Well, I read a lot. I have to read a lot of academic journals. I also have to test a lot of ideas. If I don't just publish something, I don't publish opinion pieces. I publish stuff based on data, facts, and personal results. There's no way I could do that every day of the week. There's no way I could even do that on a weekly basis. So I publish when I have something important to say, and I publish when I have something that can actually get people results. I don't try to put a limit on my publishing schedule. Now, I know that if I want Social Triggers to continue to grow, I probably will have to add some more content. I'll have to update a little bit more often because Social Triggers is at the point where I'm getting a lot of search engine traffic. And while I'm never going to go directly for SEO traffic, the more content you have, the more traffic you can generate, right? But there's a happy medium between creating the right amount of content and creating too much content just for SEO purposes, right? So I'm trying to find that happy medium still. Right now, I try to publish between 1 and 4 times a month. The podcast is a new feature where I'll write maybe 1 or 2 articles a month and maybe 2 podcasts a month. And I'm trying to keep that schedule right now.
So what else are you going to be trying? You write blog posts, you've done videos, YouTube videos, that sort of thing that are instructional. You have a podcast, and the podcast, maybe you can tell us, it's been very successful, I think, in just, what have you done, about 4 episodes or 3 episodes?
I've got 4 episodes released.
Yeah.
I've actually got 6 episodes that are unreleased. And so I already have them. I'm done with podcasts for the next few months. But so I have 4 released. That's going really well. Just to give you some numbers, my podcast went on iTunes at the end of January. Right around the end of January is when I went on iTunes. I hit the #1 podcast for marketing, the #2 podcast for business. And since then, I've had almost 40,000 podcast downloads in like about a month. I'm getting a little bit more than 1,000 downloads a day. So I'm real happy with those results. And when I linked that direct to my traffic in January, my traffic shot up on Social Triggers about 69% over December of 2011, which was my previous best month for traffic. In addition to that, I gained something like 2,300 new RSS subscribers just in January. And that was coincided with the release of the podcast. I didn't release any other articles, nothing. All I did on January was release podcasts. And that was great. So I have the podcast. I've got the articles. I'm going to be doing more video. I like video. I like doing video. And maybe there'll be some other options. Maybe there'll be some short form content that I'll experiment with. And maybe I'll test some other types of content. Maybe creating like a book database to show people the books that I'm reading. Because everyone always asks me what books I read. So I might create a little book database that people could kind of follow my train of thought. And then, of course, there's going to be some premium training products. I mean, Social Triggers is a business. I got to sell things for Social Triggers to remain a business. So that'll be the kind of the trajectory that the Social Triggers brand is on right now.
So you're talking about experimenting a lot, and some of those experiments have paid off for you in a big way. Um,
Yep.
but there are a lot of people out there who I think kind of get stuck at a plateau for months and months and months. Let's say they start a blog, it doesn't go very well for a while, they figure out a couple of things that work, and that helps them grow, but then they just keep using those same techniques over and over and over again, and their growth becomes stagnant, and it sort of feels
Yep.
like there's not a whole lot of momentum behind what they're doing. How can people get out of that stagnant period, and what's preventing them from experimenting like you're talking about and trying different things? I think people just cling to what they thought used to work, or what did used
Yeah.
to work.
So that's another interesting question. There's a famous book by Marshall Goldsmith, I think. It's called "What Got You Here Won't Get You There." Real catchy phrase. And the bottom line is there's like levels of websites. There's a level of a website where you're just growing. Then there's a level of a website where you kind of already have an audience, but then you're kind of hit that stagnant plateau. Then you could kind of break out a little bit further where you hit another plateau. So these different plateaus in growth. The first plateau, I believe, is the first 1,000 subscribers of the blog. The second plateau, I believe, is the first 10,000 subscribers of the blog, right? And the next plateau is probably the 50,000 subscribers and larger, right? And then maybe 200,000 subscribers. Every time you hit one of these plateaus, you've got to figure out if what got you there will get you to where you want to be next. Chances are it's not true. So when Social Triggers first hit the first 10,000 subscribers, I knew I had to do something else. Social Triggers couldn't remain a blog just with content if I wanted to break out, because people become accustomed to content, right? So I started experimenting with video content. Then I released a podcast. And since I've done that, I've now taken it from 10,000 subscribers, to 17,000 subscribers. And chances are, if I want to get from 17,000 now to 50,000 and above, I've got to change what I'm doing. Right now, I'm publishing infrequently. Maybe I have to experiment with publishing more frequently. Maybe I have to experiment with more types of content. I've got a podcast. I do some videos. I do some articles. Maybe I got to release more videos. Maybe I have to not release more podcasts, but maybe I have to experiment with something new that I haven't thought of yet, So every time you hit this plateau, you got to decide if you've been at that plateau for an extended period of time, like 2 or 3 months, chances are you've got to change what you're doing. Because what you're doing is not helping you grow, it's keeping you stagnant. And what can you change? You could change the type of content you create. You could change, as in format, like, audio, video, writing. You can change the style of content you're creating, long versus short, short versus medium. You could change the delivery vehicle of your content. At first, I was focusing solely on email list building, and that's what I'm still focusing on. But I knew if I wanted to reach new people, I wanted to tap into the iTunes audience. That's why I released the podcast. That was giving me access to people on iTunes that might not have found me through Google search. So now I'm using a new delivery vehicle. What's another delivery vehicle? I'm going to be experimenting with Kindle books, because I know that there's people reading books on the Kindle. That could be a new avenue of pulling people into my mix. The one thing I don't do is try to tap into the same people. Like when I first started growing, I tapped into the social media bloggers. They promoted a lot of the stuff I did with the site reviews. Then I tapped into a lot of the design bloggers and a lot of writing bloggers. That took me from, 1,000 to 5,000, and then 5,000 to 10,000. Now I'm tapping into the iTunes audience. Now I want to tap into the Kindle audience. Now I'm going to be tapping into all these different. It's kind of actually like how Facebook grew. They talk about this in the social network. They didn't just try to target everyone. They targeted one school, then they targeted another school, then they targeted another school. I'm doing that with growing my audience. I'm targeting verticals. I'm targeting delivery vehicles.
Let me ask you a question, though. I think there are a couple of different scenarios. So in your scenario, you've established that your message works. You've established that people are interested in understanding how psychology affects people's decisions online, that sort of thing.
Yep.
How do you know if your message is already working? Let's say you haven't even gotten to 1,000 subscribers. And you're wondering, should I be going to other platforms? Should I be starting a podcast? Should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? Or is my core message fundamentally flawed? Would it never take off no matter how many platforms I went on? How can you know that? How can you know that in the beginning?
The answer is to look outside of your current niche and see if anyone is doing what you're trying to do successfully. Now, let me break that down in specific examples. I knew psychology was a hot topic. Malcolm Gladwell writes nothing but psychology-based research books. It's a huge book vertical. There's magazines dedicated to it. There's blogs dedicated to it. I knew people were interested in psychology. I saw it. Chances are that those people would also be, and I also knew people were interested in marketing. So I knew combining the two was a sure fit win. There's also, like I said, there was Robert Cialdini's book, Influence, right? So I knew people liked psychology with online marketing. I knew this to be true. I saw it happening. With the conversion site review videos, where did I come up with that? I was at a conference called Affiliate Summit. They had something called SEO site clinics, which were 4 SEOs on a panel, and people would raise their hand to volunteer their site to get reviewed for SEO purposes in front of an audience at a conference. This room was packed. It was one of the most packed rooms at this conference. There was actually it was like it was only standing room only. Most packed conference ever. Conference session ever. And I thought to myself, there's no reason why this has to be at a conference session. If I just take this particular format that I knew already worked at the conference setting, I knew it would work online also. And it did. So I take ideas from outside of the echo chamber, and I pull them in and test them. Now, as another huge example, in the book Wizard of Ads, they talk about the Henry Ford story about how he came up with the assembly line. He didn't invent the assembly line. Henry Ford borrowed the assembly line from the meat packers because they used the assembly line already. So that's like another example of someone who became majorly successful who would borrow ideas from outside of his industry verticals. That's how I know when something works. I see other people doing it outside of the echo chamber.
Yeah. It's a tough problem. I see so many early bloggers just struggling with finding that thing, what that thing is. And I think it comes back to the beginning of our conversation about how you said that people really skip over finding their unique selling proposition. It's one of those things. Yep. It's like, oh yeah, sure, I know I should do that. It's like you should floss. You're gonna live longer if you floss, right? But people just nod and say, sure, I'll do that at some point, and then they skip over it. And really, it turns out that the differentiation is probably the most important thing. When people come to your site, they're asking themselves immediately, why the hell should I spend any time here? I already know that there are these other great blogs out there on similar topics. Why should I stick around this site? And if you don't give them a clear, compelling reason right away, then it's hard to keep people around.
Absolutely.
So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit of inside baseball, if you will. If we can talk about the online marketing niche. I see, I have this new blogging course, and we've had about 500 people sign up for that. And of all of those people, I see them over and over again getting into one of maybe 3 different topics. People seem to be interested in starting a blog about marketing, like you and I do. Starting a blog about personal development, like just how to become, a better person, or starting a blog about lifestyle design, which is sort of like, oh, I want to start an online business and then travel around the world, that sort of thing. Those 3 themes come up over and over and over again. And a lot of times you look into these people's background, and it's clear that they don't have any experience as a marketer. They don't have any experience starting an online business. They have very little experience changing their own life or coaching other people on how to change their lives, and yet they want to start this thing themselves, and they think that they're going to magically grow an audience around this thing, when if you're in the online marketing niche, let's be honest, you're facing Derek Halpern as your competition, or you're facing Copyblogger as your competition. What is it that you think attracts people to those markets? Do you think that that there's any hope for those people if they start a blog on those topics? And do you think that there's some better thing that they could be doing with their time, some other way that they could reach their goals quicker?
So I don't want to sound like an ass, but people do that because people are just unoriginal. They see what other people are doing. I mean, that whole travel the world and make money on the internet, it's been done before. Chris Gelbo, he did it. That's his unique selling proposition. Stop trying to be Chris Gelbo. Be you, right? Don't try to be someone else. Be you. People write about marketing and social media because they see someone like me or you doing it, and they're like, well, if they're doing it, that's what I want to do. And they actually get tricked because they like to read about marketing, right? So after reading about marketing for 4 or 5 months, they start thinking like, what am I passionate about? Well, I read marketing blogs all the time, so that must be what I'm passionate about. But that's not how you do it. Now, to really take this back to me, I started writing about marketing in 2011. 2011 is when I started to write about marketing. I've been running blogs since 2005. What did I run blogs about? I had makeup blogs, I had fashion blogs, I had blogs about celebrity gossip, I had blogs about fitness, I had blogs about everything but marketing. What did I do? You know what I did? Back in 2005, and this is probably the biggest compliment I could give someone. I stumbled on a blog called ProBlogger.net. This was 2005. I was in college. And I was thinking like, oh man, this guy's showing you how to blog and build a blog. I didn't start a blog about blogging. I started a blog about anything other than that. I started a blog about celebrity gossip. And then I just followed all the advice about how to build a blog, applied it to celebrity gossip, and guess what? It worked. I think when I first started my first blog, my celebrity gossip blog, I started in March of 2006. By March of 2007, I was already getting over 1 million hits a month. I'm pretty sure that's about the number. I think it was over 1 million hits in March 2007. But just because I went outside the vertical. Now, why do you want to stay outside of the marketing niche? You said it perfectly. You know, when you're going to write a blog about marketing, you're competing with me. You're competing with you. You're competing with Copyblog. You're competing with people that you really can't compete with yet. You don't have the experience to compete in that niche. And it's like going to fight in the octagon as the ultimate fighter with, 1 year of fighting experience. You're going to get beat up. These guys have been fighting for 20 years, or 15 years. How do you expect to be able to compete in a world where you're not really geared to compete? If you blog about anything other than marketing, you blog about fitness, and that's where you're actually, you have some experience. Knowing just a little bit of marketing advice is enough to succeed. I look at the fitness industry, or I look at even the gossip industry, the style industry, the fashion industry. None of these guys know anything about email marketing. They're not building email lists. There's a few of them, but most of these guys don't know what they're doing. I was one of them. When I started my gossip blog, I was getting, I think the most hits I got over 1 million hits in a single day on my gossip blog. I didn't even have an email sign-up form on my site. All right, even if I converted at 0.5%, that would have been 5,000 emails in a day I would have received, So I look back and I say to people now to build an email list because it's a mistake that I made. If I got, if you're getting 5 million hits a month, you could be adding 30,000 emails to your list every single month. You get 200,000, 300,000 emails in a particular thing or whatever, you're going to get some unsubscribes or whatnot. But then now you have an asset. You don't just have some random blog. You got an asset that you can use. So don't write about marketing because you think that's what you need to do. You can write about anything. As long as there's other people out there who are doing it and making money, you can really write about anything. And if you write about anything other than marketing, the competition is almost non-existent. Right now, especially. Like I started an iPhone game blog. I don't tell anyone what this is. I just started it. I created it last year as a test. I got like 9 articles on this iPhone game blog, right? 9 articles, and I'm already doing 2,000 hits a day. 9 articles, 2,000 hits a day. And it's outside of the marketing. I do tests like that all the time, but that's what people should be doing. They should find things that you're competing with people who don't know what they're doing, and then you could be the guy who has 20 years of experience versus the guy who has 1 year of experience.
Yeah, I think there's some attraction to our niche just because people tend to be passionate. I mean, you almost jumped out of your chair just now talking about that, which is pretty cool. There's a good conversation to be had, and I think people feel really passionate about it. But they also feel sometimes like the only way to build a popular business online is in the marketing niche. And that's simply because in this niche, in this online business, online marketing niche, we're always talking about our own business results. And it's not like if you go to the fitness niche, people are talking about that stuff, but the results are fucking impressive. Look at Darren Rouse, for example. His blog, ProBlogger, it's one of the biggest blogs in the marketing niche. It's been around since 2005. It's influenced basically everybody in the industry. It's impressive, but the coolest thing about Darren is that ProBlogger pales in comparison to Digital Photography School. DPS is like 5 times the size of ProBlogger. And it's not about anything having to do with marketing. It's about a passion that Darren had, digital photography. He started that thing. He used all of his marketing knowledge, like you're saying, and just absolutely blew up. And he started that 2 years after ProBlogger. You know, so there are opportunities out there that are just huge. And then if you want to talk with the people in the marketing niche, you can become buddies with all of us. Just say, hey, you know, I really killed it in the fitness niche. I'd love to share my story with your readers, and you'll be like our best friend. You know, I love hearing stories like that.
So it's actually funny. I don't know if you know this. Darren used to write on a blog called livingroom.au. And he used to write camera reviews, cell phone reviews, just a lot of technology gadget type reviews. After he started doing that and making a living, that's when he decided to launch ProBlogger.net. So he was already running blogs that made him money when he launched ProBlogger.
Right.
After he launched ProBlogger, it grew. I don't think, I mean, I don't want to speak for Darren, but I don't think ProBlogger is where he makes his money. I'm pretty sure Digital Photography School is where he makes all of his money.
Yeah.
He makes money from ProBlogger, don't get me wrong, but I think Digital Photography School definitely out-earns ProBlogger. One, it's got like 800,000 emails on an email list.
Yeah.
And two, it's linked to selling cameras. You know, people buy cameras. You know, that's, people don't buy, you know, people buy blog advice, but everyone buys cameras. There's only maybe 500,000 people who buy blog advice, but everyone wants cameras. And if you know marketing advice, you could do the Digital Photography School. I'm not telling you to create a camera blog. I'm saying, you know, something that I've been greatly interested in is like, you know, there's cycling. You know, I like the idea of cycling. I don't know of any, there's no Digital Photography School for cycling. It doesn't exist. There's no Digital Photography School for golfing. There's no Digital Photography School for even lifting weights. There's really, it's not there. It's just not there. And I think that's, I guess for lifting weights, you have bodybuilding.com. They're doing really well over there. But there's loads of opportunities for you to jump into those mainstream niches, and it's an opportunity to make a significantly more amount of money.
Derek, wow, my head is spinning. In fact, I feel like I haven't been very responsive because every time you say something, I'm thinking about my next move personally. So I appreciate you coming on. You already mentioned what's next for Social Triggers. What can you leave us with? Can you give us a little kick in the ass, maybe, if we're watching this and we're feeling like we don't know what to do, our blog or our website just hasn't been growing, we're copying other people, everything's just not falling into place for us. Can you give us a little kick in the ass to really send us off on our way and to take some action? You mentioned earlier that taking action is the thing that you want people most to do. For people who are watching this right now, what action would you like us to take?
I want you to close down this video and figure out the top 10 blogs in your particular industry. Figure out how they fit in. What's their core focus? What's their secret sauce, right? Then I want you to figure out how your blog could be positioned amongst these top 10 blogs and how you're going to be different. So I'm telling you to work on your unique selling proposition. Work on that, and then after you find that out, you know, go stand on a pedestal and preach it with a megahorn, you know, a megaphone, and just keep hitting that down all of the time. And then if you got some spare time, you know, come check out my site.
All right, when that runs out, when your action on that runs out, go check out Social Triggers. And Derek, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it. And I think we're going to be talking to you in a year from now. And hopefully you're going to be probably at least twice, maybe 3-4 times as big as you are right now, I think. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you, man. I know my audience size has to catch up to my head size.
It's almost there. Thanks,
See you
man.
later.
All right.